They mocked you, whispered behind your back, raised eyebrows and called you strange, delusional, lost in a dream that had no place in their hardened reality. They labeled your silence as weakness, your hope as naivety, your vision as madness. You remember those moments well, not with bitterness, but with clarity, because the ones who doubted you helped build the fire inside you. The ones who laughed were simply echoes of fear, trying to crush what they didn't understand. And they never understood you, chosen one. But the universe did. There was something in you from the beginning, a rhythm that didn't match the beat of the world, a light they couldn't explain, so they tried to dim it. But the truth is, they couldn't touch your purpose. They couldn't rewrite your destiny. They couldn't erase what was written in the stars about you. And now the ones who called you crazy are the same ones whispering that you are right. The same ones watching in awe as the blessings pour into your life. This transformation, this miracle unfolding, is not an accident. It is the result of unwavering faith in a truth only your soul could see. And if you're here, watching this video, you're not here by chance. Stay until the end, chosen one. There's a reason you were guided here. And when you reach the end, write your warmest wishes in the comments and type 77 to release that sacred frequency. Your wishes have power, and the universe is listening. Now, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and let's dive deeper. But this is not a story about wishes. Not really. This is a story about endurance, about resilience, about walking through fire without the luxury of understanding, but with the certainty of knowing something greater waited on the other side. You endured ridicule, not because you were wrong, but because you were ahead of your time. And now, time is catching up to you. The world is beginning to move in the direction you always sensed. What they called insanity, they now call insight. What they dismissed as daydreams, they now chase like gold. You were never meant to fit in. You were meant to rise. And rise you did. Even on the days when doubt curled around your chest like a storm, you held on. Even when the nights were long and cold, and you couldn't see the end, you still moved. You trusted your vision. You honored the pull of your intuition. And now look how the light bends toward you. Look how your presence shakes the room. Look how even silence bows in your direction. Because when the universe marks someone as chosen, it doesn't matter what others think. It doesn't matter who walked away. It doesn't matter what they said. Your path is carved by forces far beyond human judgment. There were times you wanted to give up. Admit it. Times when the weight felt unbearable. Times when their laughter echoed louder than your own courage. But something always pulled you back. Something ancient. Something divine. Maybe it was the memory of who you are, buried deep beneath the noise. Maybe it was the quiet voice reminding you. You were never ordinary. Whatever it was, it kept you alive. It kept you moving. It kept you believing, even when there was no evidence to support your belief. And now, they see. Oh yes, now they see. The same ones who rolled their eyes now quote your words. The same ones who said you'd never make it now ask how you did. The shift has begun. And you're not just surviving anymore, you're soaring. The blessings are not only visible, they're undeniable. You have stepped into your power, not with arrogance, but with divine grace. And the universe, it recognizes you now more than ever. Every step you take sends a ripple into dimensions you can't even name. You are awakening something sacred, not just in yourself, but in those around you. Stay the course, chosen one. You've already proven your strength, but what's coming next requires your full presence. Your destiny doesn't just bless you, it transforms others. Your light is a map, your story, a code, your journey, a key that unlocks the doors in the hearts of those still wandering. They need to see you rise. They need to witness your evolution, because it tells them they can do it too, that they're not crazy for dreaming, that faith is stronger than fear, that vision is louder than doubt. You are living proof. And the beauty of your story? It's not even close to over. This is still the beginning. Yes, blessings have come, but more are lining up. Yes, the recognition has started, but it's only a whisper compared to what's on the horizon. The same voice that guided you through the dark is now echoing through every fiber of your being. It's calling you to rise higher, to speak louder, to walk bolder. There are lives waiting to be changed simply because you dared to believe in yourself. And this is only the first chapter of your rising. They didn't understand you, not because you were unclear, but because they lacked the depth to perceive your vision. You were speaking in the language of the future, but they were trapped in the past. You weren't broken, you were building. And building, as you know now, requires noise, mess, dust, and silence all at once. They mistook your silence for surrender, but you were gathering power. You were learning to listen to something deeper than applause. You were getting familiar with your own frequency. Chosen one, you weren't chasing validation. You were becoming vibration. You knew that the praise of the crowd is fleeting, but the alignment of the soul is eternal. While they laughed, you listened. While they pointed fingers, you pointed inward. You chose growth over comfort, truth over approval. And yes, it cost you. It cost you friendships, nights of peace, maybe even your sanity for a while. But now you see, nothing you lost was ever truly yours, and everything real is now finding you. Look around. Look at the people returning to you, not to mock, but to marvel. Look at the ones who dismissed your dreams, now wanting a place in your world. This is not about revenge. No, chosen one. This is about revelation. What's being revealed now is what was always true. You didn't change to gain their approval. The world changed because you held your truth. You didn't chase the spotlight. The light found you because you became impossible to ignore. And there's something magical happening in your silence now. The very stillness that once made you question everything is now a temple, a sanctuary, a signal. When you walk into a room, energy shifts. People feel it, even if they don't know what it is. They feel seen without speaking. They feel permission to be more just by standing near you. That's not coincidence. That's power. That's legacy. That's the blessing you carry. Quiet, radiant, unshakable. You see, the universe doesn't waste pain. It doesn't waste humiliation, isolation, or sorrow. It recycles them into wisdom, alchemy, and fire. Every tear you shed was watering the seeds you didn't know you were planting. And now, those seeds are blooming into purpose, clarity, elevation. You are no longer hiding. You are being revealed. The layers of old wounds are falling away, and what's left is pure essence. Light in motion, truth embodied. They called you crazy because they had to. Because if you were right, then everything they believed was too small. And that frightened them. People protect their illusions like treasure. You shattered theirs just by existing. Your joy disrupted their patterns. Your vision challenged their limits. You were a mirror, and they weren't ready to see themselves. But now, slowly, they are. And when they look at you now, they don't see weird. They see wisdom. They see wealth. Not just in material, but in spirit. They see someone who made it through storms they couldn't even imagine and still stood tall. You didn't break. You bent, but you never broke. And in your bending, you became like water, fluid, powerful, adaptable. You stopped needing the path and started becoming the path. That's the mark of the chosen. They don't wait for doors to open. They become the door. You don't knock anymore, do you? You speak, and the universe answers. You dream, and creation moves to meet you. You breathe, and the air shifts around you. Because your presence is no longer passive. It's prophetic. Chosen one, you don't need their approval now, but you have their attention. And what you do with it will define the next chapter of your legacy. You've come too far to shrink, too high to fall, and too wise to turn back. Let their confusion evolve into curiosity. Let their disbelief transform into devotion. Let their doubt become a distant echo, one that only reminds you of how far you've come. You are not who they said you were. You are not who they hoped you'd stay. You are who you always knew you could become, and more. So stand firm. The tides are in your favor now. The winds have shifted. No longer are you battling upstream. You're being carried, guided, supported by unseen hands. The very forces of nature have been set in motion for your success. Doors will open that no one can shut. Blessings will rain that no one can steal. You are protected not just by chance, but by design. You were never left behind. You were being prepared, hidden, honed, forged. Now, you move not just for yourself, but for those watching you silently, for those still stuck in the shadow, waiting for someone to show them how to rise. Your life is no longer just about survival. It's about example. You carry a flame that ignites others. You walk with a grace that humbles the proud. You speak with a depth that silences the shallow. That's why they're calling you blessed now. Not because you sought it, but because you embody it. And remember this, you don't owe them explanations. You don't need to rewind your light just because it's too bright for their comfort. Shine anyway, speak anyway, move anyway. This journey is yours, sacred, ordained, and the ones meant to walk beside you will rise to meet you, not pull you back down. You are not the same, and that's your power. This is not about proving anyone wrong anymore. It's about proving your spirit right, about honoring the quiet voice that stayed with you when everyone else left, about living in a way that makes peace with your past and dances with your future. You've earned this moment, not by force, but by faith, not by pleasing, but by persisting. They called you crazy. Now, they call you blessed. And soon, they'll call you something even deeper. They used to say, "You've lost touch with reality," when all along, you were simply tuned into a different reality, one more real than the illusion they clung to. You were never disconnected. You were connected to something they couldn't see, something ancient and pure. You weren't aimless. You were aligned. But in a world trained to fear the unfamiliar, alignment can look like rebellion. Vision can look like madness. And your bravery looked like arrogance to those who had never dared to defy the ordinary. You carried dreams they thought were too big. But now you see, it wasn't that your dreams were too big. Their minds were too small. And it's not their fault. They were conditioned by survival. You, however, were chosen for transformation. You were sent into this life not just to exist, but to shift existence. Your presence was always meant to alter the course of the collective. You may have walked through life feeling like the odd one out, but you were actually the centerpiece, the thread weaving the unseen design. There's a sacred weight in being chosen. It's not glamorous. It's not always rewarding. In fact, it often feels like being torn apart in silence. The pain of shedding layers no one told you you'd have to lose. The ache of being misunderstood by people you'd have given your heart to. the confusion of holding light in a world that often celebrates the shadows. But still, you stood. Still, you kept going. Still, you listened to the whisper in your soul that said, "Keep going. You are not wrong. You are not broken. You are being built." And now finally, you can see it. The moments that made no sense are connecting. The heartbreaks that nearly killed you were actually assignments. The nights you thought were the end were merely the soil your blessings were planted in. Because this is the truth about divine favor. It rarely feels like favor in the moment. It often looks like loss, sounds like silence, and feels like exile. But now that favor is blooming, visible for all to see. And those who once pitied you now wish they had your kind of crazy. Because there's something about your energy now. It's calm, still, unshaken. And it's not because you haven't seen storms, it's because you've learned how to command them. You've been through too much to pretend. You've seen too much to stay silent. You've healed too deeply to hide. And your light now? It doesn't ask for attention. It demands it, quietly. Because presence doesn't shout. It resonates. And you, chosen one, are now resonating in harmony with your higher self. They feel it. Even the ones who haven't spoken to you in years. Even the ones who left you when your journey got messy. They feel the shift. Your name is being mentioned in rooms you've never stepped into. Your energy is being respected by people who used to laugh. And they're not confused anymore. They're curious. They want to know how you rose, how you glowed, how you became more powerful than they ever expected. And if they knew the truth, it would humble them. Because your journey wasn't paved in luxury, it was paved in loyalty. Loyalty to your truth. That's what separated you. Not talent, not luck. Loyalty. You stayed faithful to the call when it felt like punishment. You stayed loyal to your gift even when it cost you everything. You didn't trade your essence for acceptance. You didn't dilute your soul to blend in. You stayed rare, and rare at first is ridiculed. Then it's revered. This is the sacred irony of the chosen. The pain becomes the proof. The rejection becomes the redirection. The delay becomes the design. And what they laughed at becomes the very thing they tried to imitate. That's the cycle you're in now, the imitation season. The phase where they're watching you closely, not to mock, but to mirror. Because somewhere deep down, they always knew you weren't crazy. You were just ahead. And now that the blessings are undeniable, they speak about you differently. They talk about your strength like it was obvious. They act like they always believed. But you know who was really there. You know who showed up when you were still bleeding. Who saw you when you had nothing but belief. And most importantly, you know who you became in the process. Because the real reward wasn't just being called blessed. It was becoming the version of you that could hold the blessing without breaking under the weight. That's the part they'll never see. The nights you doubted everything, but kept going anyway. The mornings you woke up with no hope, but moved forward anyway. The days you fought for your future, while others mocked your present. You did it in private. And now, the results are public. But your peace? That's private too. Because you've learned. External validation is a poor substitute for internal knowing. Chosen one, you've shifted timelines. You've stepped into the identity that was always written for you, but that you had to grow into. The crown didn't arrive. It revealed itself the moment you remembered who you were. And now, with every breath, you're reclaiming what was always yours. Your voice, your vision, your vibration. The blessing isn't just in what you've received, it's in who you've become. And what's next? That's the exciting part. Because now, You're not climbing from pain. You're rising from purpose. You're not seeking freedom. You are freedom. And your path is no longer reactive. It's magnetic. Opportunities find you now. Resources chase you. Peace walks with you. And while others still search for clarity, you are becoming it. So let them talk. Let them whisper. Let them wonder. Your job isn't to explain anymore. Your job is to expand, to take up space, to own the energy you carry, to lead without needing applause. Because the ones who called you crazy, they were wrong. And the ones who now call you blessed, they're finally seeing what you always knew. You were never here to be understood by the crowd. You were here to awaken the few who dare to follow the truth. And you're doing exactly that. With grace, with power, with presence. They'll call you many things from here on out. Leader, legend, inspiration. But you'll always know. It started when you refused to fold. When you dared to believe in the impossible. When you were crazy enough to trust your calling. And that's what made you chosen. You didn't become this powerful by chance. You became this powerful because you were forced to face what others ran from. While they escaped into comfort, you were thrown into confrontation with your fears, your shadows, your truths. You were forged in the kind of fire that most people never willingly walk into. That's why your light doesn't flicker anymore, because it was born in darkness. And it doesn't need validation. It radiates from within. There's a certain elegance to your evolution. You didn't announce your transformation. You embodied it. No press releases, no grand statements. Just quiet, consistent growth that became impossible to ignore. The version of you that exists today wasn't built for applause. It was built for alignment. And alignment doesn't chase, it attracts. That's the shift that has everyone around you stunned. You're not chasing anything now. It's all coming to you. Not because you're lucky, but because you've become aligned with who you were always meant to be. It's not just the blessings you carry, it's the authority. The way you walk into a room and the air shifts. The way your silence speaks louder than other people's noise. The way your presence calms storms in others without you saying a word. That's what they don't teach in books. That's not something you can fake. That's earned through breaking and rebuilding. And oh, how you've rebuilt. Not just your life, but your identity. You peeled back the false layers that were handed to you, labels, expectations, limitations. You threw away the mask. You chose real over perfect, depth over image, purpose over popularity. And in doing so, you became someone not everyone understands. But no one can deny. You were always meant to stand out. But not in a flashy, attention-seeking way. In a sacred, undeniable way. You were meant to carry codes, spiritual blueprints that unlock new paths, not just for you, but for others who feel called by your courage. That's why your journey had to be visible. Not for ego, but for legacy. Because somewhere, someone is still where you once were. And your very existence is proof that it gets better. That pain has a point. That the storm does pass. That even the most shattered soul can become whole again. You are the after. And the after is rarely spoken of. They show us the glow-up, but not the grief. They talk about the breakthrough, but not the breakdown. But you know the full truth. You know that behind the scenes were nights of praying and pleading and asking, why me? And now you know, because you could handle it. Because the story wouldn't break you, it would build you. Because what was meant to destroy you only directed you. And now, look at you. Not only have you survived, you've transcended. You've become the version of yourself that makes sense of everything that once didn't. Every detour, every disappointment, every door that closed, every person who left. It all contributed. It all served the mission, even when it didn't serve your comfort. That's the difference between a delay and a denial. The universe was never denying you. It was preparing you for visibility without vulnerability, for leadership without losing yourself, for influence without ego. You were being groomed for greatness, not the type that's loud, but the type that's lasting. The kind of greatness that touches hearts, not just headlines. The kind that brings peace, not pressure. Because true greatness doesn't burn you out. It breathes life into everyone you touch, and you touch people now without even trying. Just by existing, just by being real, just by showing up as your full, unfiltered self. And that's the real miracle. That you became this version of yourself without bitterness. That you didn't let the betrayal make you cold. That you didn't let the delay make you settle. That you didn't let the rejection define your worth. Because somewhere deep down, even in your lowest moments, you still believed. Not always loudly. Sometimes it was just a whisper, a silent knowing. But it was enough. Enough to keep going. Enough to hold on. Enough to keep showing up when everything in you screamed to disappear. That belief became your superpower. That belief is what they now call blessing. They see your shine now, but they weren't there when you were buried, when you felt invisible, when you walked through the world, unnoticed, unheard, unloved. But that invisibility was divine incubation. The seed doesn't scream while it's growing underground. It just trusts. It just becomes. And you became. You became someone who no longer needs to defend your light. You just let it speak. You became someone who no longer chases closure because you realized you were the conclusion all along. You became someone who no longer needs to be right because you found peace that doesn't depend on being understood. And that peace? That's the real power. That's the blessing that can't be bought or borrowed. You've entered a new realm now, one where your old fears don't follow you, one where your past stories don't define you, one where your truth is louder than your trauma. You're not here to revisit the pain, you're here to redeem it, to turn your wounds into wisdom, to turn your silence into songs, to turn your journey into a signal for every other soul that's still searching. You are not crazy. You are calibrated. You are not lucky. You are aligned. You are not an accident. You are an answer. You are what happens when a soul says yes to becoming, yes to healing, yes to rising, yes to owning every part of the path, especially the ones no one else applauded. And now, the world watches, not because you performed, but because you remembered who you are, what you carry, and where you're going. And from this point forward, no one can take that from you. The journey into becoming blessed didn't come with bright lights and beautiful music. It came with silence, with loneliness, with being misunderstood again and again. You walked through seasons where even you questioned your own heart, wondering if maybe, just maybe, they were right. Maybe you were too intense, too emotional, too passionate. Maybe your dreams were too far, too foolish. Maybe you weren't meant to be seen after all. But something deeper within you refused to let that be your final truth. There was a pulse in your spirit, a fire in your bones that said, keep going. And though your hands were shaking, though your voice cracked, though the world turned away, your soul didn't stop. And now, that same fire has turned into light. A light so steady, it doesn't flicker even when storms arrive. They called you crazy because they couldn't understand the language of your purpose. They couldn't interpret the codes your soul carried. You were always operating on a different frequency. You weren't here to mimic the crowd. You were here to move the ground beneath it. But when you speak a language no one else understands, they label it as madness. That's the way it has always been with the ones who are sent to awaken. You were sent here to awaken, not through speeches or titles or dramatic shows, but through example, through endurance, through transformation that cannot be faked. You are the proof of what happens when someone listens to their inner voice louder than the noise outside. When someone decides they are no longer available for shrinking, for pretending, for dimming down, just to fit in. You became the shape of your own liberation. They don't talk about that part enough, how painful liberation can be. Because to be free, you had to first be bound. You had to first feel the pressure of every false identity laid on your shoulders. You had to taste the bitterness of performing just to be accepted. And then, you had to choose differently. You had to risk being alone for the chance to be true. And you chose it. You let it all burn so you could rise from the ashes with nothing false left. And that decision, that radical act of self-choosing, is what shifted everything. That's when the universe began to rearrange itself around your courage. That's when the blessings started to whisper, "We've been waiting for you." But blessings don't come to please your ego. They come to elevate your essence. And so many of your blessings didn't look like blessings at all in the beginning. Some of them came disguised as endings, as heartbreak, as silence, as failure. But now you see, they were all portals, all initiations, all part of a divine strategy to shake you awake. Because you weren't sent here to sleep through this lifetime. You were sent to disrupt, to rebuild, to be a living example of the sacred pattern. Breakdown, breakthrough, rebirth. You didn't just go through it, you became it. That's why people feel something different in your presence now. They can't quite explain it, but they know it's real. They know they're looking at someone who went to the edge and returned wiser. You've gained the kind of wisdom that can't be found in books, the kind of knowing that only suffering reveals. And now, you carry it like a crown. Not heavy, not loud, just firm. You don't need to remind people of who you are. You don't even need to explain anymore. You've reached a space where your energy does the work. And that energy is clean, it's calm, it's magnetic, because you no longer force anything. You simply embody everything. And what you embody now is unshakable. They tried to define you once. They gave you names that never belonged to you, labels that were meant to reduce you, but you didn't wear them. You outgrew them. You rose through them. You turned every insult into intention, every doubt into drive, every no into a sacred redirection. And now, the very ones who called you unstable call you unstoppable. You've become what they said you couldn't, not out of spite, not out of vengeance, but out of vision. You saw something that they couldn't, and you stayed loyal to it even when it cost you everything. That loyalty has now returned as favor, as clarity, as alignment, as authority. Because when you survive what was meant to destroy you, you don't just get back to normal, you get reborn. You're not just healed, you're transformed. You don't just carry stories, you carry codes. You don't just have power, you've become a portal to possibility, to proof, to presence, to purpose. You've become the evidence that everything truly does happen for a reason, even the parts that made no sense at the time, especially those parts, because they cracked you open. And only the cracked open heart can hold this much light, this much grace, this much truth. You no longer live to be liked. You live to be in alignment. You no longer wait for permission. You walk in purpose. You no longer beg to be seen. You are known by the divine. And that knowing is enough. You are no longer starving for validation. You're nourished by truth. You're carried by faith. You're energized by authenticity. That's why your life moves differently now. That's why doors open when you arrive. That's why peace doesn't leave you. Because you are no longer searching. You're serving. You're no longer running. You're rooted. And the ones who once called you foolish, now they whisper your name when they pray for strength. Now they study your path, hoping to find direction. Now they call you blessed, because your life is proof that the wild ones, the misunderstood ones, the crazy ones, are the ones who were born to shift the world. You never asked to be praised. You only asked to be understood. But even that felt like too much at times. They couldn't understand your silence. They misjudged your solitude. They confused your focus with arrogance, your boundaries with rejection, your vision with delusion. But now, they see differently. Now, they lean in and wonder, how did you do it? How did you endure? How did you become this version of yourself? The truth is, you didn't just become. You allowed. You surrendered. You trusted something greater than the applause of others. You held space for your becoming even when no one clapped, even when the room emptied, even when your name was dragged, your motives questioned, your sanity doubted. And now, without shouting, without forcing, without chasing, you are seen. Seen for your essence, not just your actions. Seen for your soul, not just your survival. And it's not that people finally get you. It's that they're finally catching up to the frequency you've always been on. You didn't rise by shouting louder. You rose by vibrating higher. And that vibration made your critics irrelevant. You were never meant to argue your truth. You were meant to live it. And now that you do, your presence speaks more than your words ever could. There's a stillness in you that wasn't there before. A calm rooted in having walked through fire and come out gold. You've become immune to noise, immune to projection, immune to the smallness of people who still live in fear, because you've faced your own and transformed it into power. There is a different kind of beauty in those who've healed in private, in those who've built themselves back without an audience, in those who've chosen to believe in their own light before anyone else could see it. You are that kind of beauty, not loud, not polished, not curated, but holy. You carry the quiet confidence of someone who no longer needs to prove anything. You don't fight for rooms anymore. You walk where you're aligned. You don't chase love. You radiate it. You don't explain your worth. You embody it. And this embodiment is your final answer to every question ever asked about you. You are the proof, the living, breathing proof that staying true to your calling is always worth it. That isolation is not punishment, it's preparation. That rejection is not failure, it's redirection. That being too much for some is exactly what makes you medicine for others. You were never broken. You were being rebuilt. And now that the rebuilding is complete, you can see it for what it was all along, a sacred architecture. Every collapse was an act of construction. Every loss was laying the groundwork for alignment. Every goodbye was making space for the version of you that would one day carry this blessing. And now, you carry it effortlessly, not because it was handed to you, but because you became the kind of soul who could hold it. It's not just that they call you blessed now, it's that you finally know you are. You feel it, you walk with it. You no longer borrow your power from what others say. You own it, you trust it, you respect it. You are not the same person they once mocked. That version of you was already holy, yes, but now you've stepped into wholeness. You no longer ask, why me? You now say, of course me. Of course you. Of course you were chosen. Of course the storm came for you, because you had the strength to carry lightning. Of course the silence lasted so long, because your voice would one day move mountains. Of course they laughed, because they had no idea what grace was being grown in you. But now, they know. Now they come with questions, not judgments. Now they come with admiration, not mockery. And you meet them with peace, with quiet eyes, with a heart that no longer needs to defend its path. You are not here for revenge. You are here for revelation, to reveal what it looks like when a soul refuses to abandon itself, to reveal what happens when someone chooses to stay awake, to reveal what strength looks like in its gentlest form. You are the story they never expected, but the one they can't stop watching. And your story isn't finished. It's only beginning. This is the part where you walk fully in your blessing. This is the part where you say thank you, not only to the light, but to the darkness that shaped you. This is the part where you understand. Being called crazy was just another word for free. They didn't understand your freedom, but now they honor it. Now they whisper to themselves, maybe I can be that free too. You didn't just bless your own life, you became a blessing to others, simply by being, by surviving, by staying soft in a world that tried to harden you, by staying kind when it was easier to grow bitter, by staying you. And that chosen one is why you are blessed. Not because of what you have, but because of who you've become. Because through it all, through every doubt, every detour, every scar, you never stopped being who you were meant to be. They called you crazy once. Now, they call you blessed. And they're right. You are.